What's up, Exiles? It's Hegemony. It's kind of a sad time right now because I lost my explosive arrow character due to an internet outage. I lost connection for 8 seconds, and then it caused me to do some testing of how long you actually stay in the game when your ISP drops out. From my initial testing, it was 7.9 seconds the first time and 7.5 seconds the second time. You can test this by having a live conversation with a friend, doing a simple countdown 3, 2, 1, and then disabling your network adapter. And then your friend takes the stopwatch, and then he takes it from your countdown up until he sees your character disappear. So the goal of my next character is to have passive tankiness so that I can withstand 8 seconds of normal map play. And while it's easy to make a passively tanky character, the challenge comes to getting a respectable clear speed. This brings me to my next character, the Duelist Gladiator. This Ascendancy class is quite unique because it has a lot of emphasis on block mechanics in Path of Exile. Versatile Combatant is 100% of your block chance applied to spells. That is not a conversion. That's a straight up addition to any amount of block chance that you're able to get. In addition to Versatile Combatant, we have Painforged. This gives you 8 additional block chance if you were damaged by a hit recently. That means if you walk into Burning Ground or an RF character, it will not proc Painforged. 40% increased damage if you're taking no damage from hits recently. The important thing with the damage increase is that when you block an attack, you take 0 damage from it. These two notables are surrounded by smaller nodes that give you additional block chance and attack speed with one-handed weapons while holding a shield or dual wielding. The next two nodes will be spent on Gratuitous Violence. 25% chance to cause bleeding on hit with attacks, 30% increased damage against bleeding enemies. Bleeding enemies you kill explode, dealing 10% of their maximum life as physical damage. Note this is similar to Abyssal Cry's Chaos Explosion and Infernal Blow's Fiery Explosion. They're different damage types, but it's kind of the same mechanic in that it's unavoidable damage. The physical scaling of the explosion can be scaled by global physical increase in damage, something that you might get from a Rustic Sash, or by helping Oak and Cruel, and the starter Shadow Nodes that increase physical and chaos damage. The reason I didn't take Outmatch and Outlast, which grants you 25% chance to gain a frenzy charge on kill with your main hand, and 25% chance to gain an endurance charge when you kill stuff with your offhand. While this is pretty cool, to fully utilize this you would have to use something that uses both weapons, like Dual Strike or Cyclone. But in this case, I'm choosing a skill that I have not used before, which is Earthquake. It is important to note that Earthquake can only be used with an axe, mace, or staff. So my current choice of weapon is the Varunastra Vol Blade, which is exclusive to the Perandus Leagues. And while the DPS is not that impressive, the important part of the Varunastra Blade is that it says it counts as all one-handed melee weapon types. This is important because it gives you a lot of freedom into what you can pick up on the skill tree with one-handed melee weapon types. And in this case I chose Adder's Touch. It's a dagger node that gives you 30% chance to poison when you crit. It also gives you 60% crit multi, and before that it gives you a slew of crit chance and crit multi nodes. Well, you might be wondering, well, you're using Varunastra, which has a local crit chance of 5%. That is very low. While this is true, there are a lot of ways of getting really efficient crit on the tree and through itemization. Let's go over some of that right now. Here's a wheel that normally is never picked up by any character, but with Varunastra it makes complete sense. Because Varunastra counts as every one-handed melee weapon type, it'll triple dip with this entire wheel next to Deadly Dilettant. This notable will give you 72% increased physical damage with your weapons. These two nodes will give you 12% increased attack speed each. This node will give you 75 crit chance, and this one will give you 36. So you can see the point efficiency in this wheel is made for Varunastra. It might as well be called the Varunastra wheel. But we still have to deal with a 5% crit base, and 75 crit from one node is not enough. So next to this wheel we have Twin Terrors, which gives us a total of 125% crit chance with 3 points. And in the near future I plan on moving to Fatal Blade, which is the bread and butter crit swords wheel. This will give me 110% critical strike chance, 30 crit multi, and 10% increased physical damage with swords and Varunastra. Additional crit chance can be found in the shadow area, as assassination, the surrounding nodes, and trickery will also improve crit chance. But that's not all. In the ranger area, we have aspect of the links, which gives you 20 crit, and we have the Heartseeker wheel. It's another 50 with 40 crit multi. As for crit chance help through itemization, I'll be using the Shadows and Dusk gloves. These are very similar to Malagaros. They give you crit chance and crit multi. However, this one gives me physical attack damage leached as mana, and that's how I will sustain. It also creates a smoke cloud on Rampage, and I get Unholy Might for 3 seconds on Rampage. And that means every time a Rampage effect goes out, I gain Unholy Might for 3 seconds. Unholy Might calculates a portion of your physical damage and adds it as chaos. This will help with poison. And as far as my offhand, this is probably a new one you haven't seen in any build. This is Mark of the Doubting Knight Platinum Chris. This actually came out a long time ago, but nobody used it. But now I'm going to use it because it gives me a lot of things that I actually need for this build. 80% increased global critical strike chance. That is the most you can get from a dagger implicit. 5% additional block chance while dual wielding. You get an automatic 15% block chance increase just by dual wielding. So this will give you a total of 20. And that 20 will get enhanced to spell block because of versatile combatant. Moving along to the next property on this dagger, which is 191 increased physical damage. This variance goes higher, but it's actually irrelevant for what I'm doing. I'm using a main hand only skill, which is Earthquake. Leap Slam is also a main hand only attack. However, I've been considering using Whirling Blades in addition to using Leap Slam, as it would increase my ability to get around. Whirling Blades does choose a weapon at random, and that would affect the damage, but who honestly really cares about Whirling Blade damage these days? The reduced attack speed on this dagger is actually not a problem at all because I'm using Earthquake, which has a soft cap at which the fissures can explode. And since I can dish multiple attacks before one fissure can explode, the downside is actually not too bad. The next stat is All Resistance. That's pretty self-explanatory. Who doesn't love more resistances? Followed by the rest, we have one of the most important reasons to use this weapon as an offhand, which is the melee critical strike chance have a 25% chance to cause bleeding and poison. That is why it's so important that we crit. In addition to the dagger, we have other damage over time improvements. We have Dirty Techniques, which increases damage over time by 40%, increases skill effect duration, which is actually kind of bad for Earthquake because it makes the fissures take longer. And then we have 25% chance of poison on hit against bleeding enemies. So we have increased physical damage taken over time, 8% additional chance to cause bleeding, and then 20 increased damage over time. And when it's noted as damage over time, that will improve both the bleed and the poison in this build. So combined with Gratuitous Violence, which gives you 25% chance, and then we have the 8% next to Dirty Techniques, that's a 33% chance alone without having to crit to apply a bleed. And whenever we crit with Leap Slam or Earthquake, we have an additional 25% chance to cause bleeding, on top of having 55% chance to poison the enemy through Adder's Touch and Mark of the Doubting Knight. We can't also forget that Dirty Techniques includes a 25% chance to poison on hit against bleeding enemies. And this is pretty much the reason why I chose Leap Slam and Earthquake, as it synergizes very well. I leap into a pack, having a chance to apply bleed from just the Leap Slam, and then I have the initial hit from Earthquake, which then causes the fissure. So in a way, you can see this as a 3-part attack. And you'll notice with the gameplay that this plays a lot like the Leap Sweeper and includes knockback, and that's thanks to the Lion's Roar Granite Flask. This gives you a 35% more melee physical damage. This flask will scale your poison and bleeding damage immensely. And what's unique about this skill is it gets monsters to move in 2 different ways. When you use this flask, any nearby enemies have a 75% chance to flee. This will disorient them, causing them to take extra bleeding damage if they already have it. Additionally, it gives you knockback to your skills. So in this case, Leap Slam and Earthquake would have a guaranteed knockback chance. And anyone who's been playing Path of Exile know what a puncture feels like when they're moving. And the last thing I have to really push my offense is the series promise. This one says, gain 25% of your physical damage and add it as extra chaos. This will increase poison degen damage, and it'll also help me leech. Unfortunately, I don't do any elemental damage, so that is pretty irrelevant. Make sure to get a high physical damage as extra chaos roll on your series promise. Now that was quite a lot to absorb, but we still need to go over the defenses. This character is sitting at a passive 65 block and 69 spell block. However, it is worth noting that I am using a Legacy Bringer of Rain, which has a 15% chance to block. This will change to 6%. So with 9% block gone, I'll be at 56% block chance with 60% spell block. However, on the Challenge League, I've obtained a Corrupted Anvil with 3% block chance. That'll be 3% block and spell block. And in this case, I'm using the 4% block on standard. So let's talk about the Anvil. What does it do for me in this character? It gives me additional armor, 42 life gain when block, 18 mana gain when block, reduced movement speed. The movement speed doesn't matter because I'm using Leap Slam to move around, just like my Leap Sweeper. And then we have the +3 maximum block chance with 8 additional block. So this allows me to go over the block cap of 75 to 78. And since you have Versatile Combatant, the only role that's important on the Rumi's Concoction is your attack block. Now we actually have more block chance through Pain Forged. This gives me 8 additional block chance if you're damaged by a hit recently. Note that this will be 9% less without a Legacy Bringer of Rain. Because I have the Keystone Iron Reflexes, which converts all my evasion into armor, I'm using the Grace Aura. This is a very significant aura as it gives me a substantial amount of armor. We go from 5.8k armor to 12.7k armor. If you don't want to run Grace, you always have the option of running a Blasphemy with Enfeeble. This would reduce damage of all types in a close range. It is worth noting that curses have a reduced effectiveness on bosses, and it won't affect the monsters that are out in the Blasphemy range. For the Bandit rewards on this character, I chose Oak 3 times. I chose the physical damage and Cruel because this is global physical damage. This will affect the AoE explosion on death on bleeding targets. It'll affect the bleed, the initial hits, and even the poisons. Getting a crazy amount of attack speed kind of hinders your effectiveness using the skill Earthquake, as you are limited with the number of fissure explosions. However, attack speed allows you to leap slam faster, so that's always cool. Bringer of Rain is a great choice for this character as it gives me additional block chance. In the Challenge League it'll give me 6. In addition, it gives me flat physical damage, which is great for the build, and whenever I block I have a 10% chance of gaining an endurance charge. So it's a nice way to build up extra charges or just refresh your stack. Bringer of Rain is linked with Blind, so you have a chance of applying Blind when you use your attacks. And then we have Shadows and Dust Gauntlets, which create a smoke cloud on Rampage, and the Rampage goes off quite often. And the smoke cloud is a guaranteed blind to anyone standing in it. I will be using Blood Rage to leech and get frenzy charges, and that's about it with the character. And lastly, I want to say that this character is pretty much a prototype or a proof of concept. I do want to earn power charges, and the way I'm thinking about doing that is possibly using Riposte and Vengeance with power charge on crit. While I don't think this is going to sustain power charges, it will give me one here and there. But the real question is, will this character survive for 8 seconds when my internet craps out next? Tune into the stream and find out. Thanks for watching.